What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the AWS Summit in Los Angeles. My name is Aaron Hunter. I am a principal developer advocate on the AWS Training and Certification, AWS Training Live team, whatever team it is. We are here talking to you directly on twitch.tv/AWS OnAir. But normally, Greg and I, because Greg is my co-host today, we are on the twitch.tv/AWS Training Live team, and we're going to talk to you all about deep dive into LLMs with AWS.
Hello, great to be here with you here today, Aaron. I am Greg Powell, Senior Startup Solutions Architect here at AWS, and we have lots to talk to you about Gen AI, specifically large language models, and deep diving on that as much as we can in less than 20 seconds, 20 minutes.
Oh, 20 seconds. Okay. That time got real tight.
Yeah, that'd be very compressed, yeah.
All right. So, Greg, you have hosted with us several times, but you have not hosted with the Deep Dive into LLM show or the Learn Generative AI for Developers show yet, have you?
No, I have not, but I did binge watch the deep dive LLM session that you and the team did, and it was quite fascinating. And when they said the deep dive, they were not joking. They meant it.
They meant it, but we didn't just get there from thin air. So if our producers in the backstage can bring my screen up on the screen here, what we'll soon be able to see is the Learn Generative AI for Developers landing page. And this is a primer into the deep dive into LLM show that we have pulled up. So there it is. Okay, I see it on the screen.
There we go.
Perfect. So what we see here is our Learn Generative AI for Developers, and this is something that was presented by Ivan Forrest and David Lance. David actually was a host for the Deep Dive into LLM series, but they have several episodes that give you an introduction into generative AI. So if you don't know what generative AI is, or maybe it's your first time hearing about it, or you don't have a lot of experience, this would be a really good starting point for you. So getting started with Amazon Bedrock, foundations of prompt engineering, a couple episodes there, and then finally building a generative AI application using Amazon Bedrock. But Greg, let's jump over to the Deep Dive series. And do you want to talk us through the multiple episodes that we have there?
Very proper. Episodes.
Episodes. Oh, by the way, we have chat moderators who should be dropping links in the chat, so that way you can get the information, you can get links to these, and check out the series and the episodes on your own.
Yeah, so going into the deep dive for LLMs with AWS, it was 4 episodes, and what I liked about it is, like Aaron said, even though it is a deep dive, it was delivered in a very, I would say, non-intimidating way. So it's kind of like, you know, the 0 to 100, where by the time you get to that 4th episode, you are up to speed with what you need to do. Episode 1 was what are large language models and foundation models. Episode 2 dug deeper into the prompt engineering. Episode 3 was like how you can take existing models and start fine-tuning. And then episode 4, which is a topic that I think is very important, is LLMs and the concept of responsible AI.
Exactly. And today, which one of these episodes are we covering during this segment?
This segment, we're going to focus on what are the large language models and foundation models is kind of where we're going to focus on here today.
Exactly. So before we jump into that, because we do have some additional information for our viewers here, because we do have a demo built out, but where can you go to learn more? And that is within Skill Builder. So again, our chat moderator is going to drop links to these in the chat, so that way you can click on it and you can dive deep into it. But if you first go to skillbuilder.aws, then you're going to see a lot of options for you. But we're going to give you some very prescriptive guidance here. So if you just type in generative AI, you're going to find a lot of different things like executives and planning a generative AI project. But this one right here, the generative AI learning plan for developers, I already have it pulled up, is what David, Ivan, and Forrest walked through. And it has this learning plan structure, and it's free. But you can see that, again, it's the same thing. So very similar to their episode structure. But we're going to dive deeper into the LLM aspect of it. So you can sign up free for the training, go through that, watch their episodes, and then join us as we talk about large language models.
That's right. Aaron, I was going to say on that generative AI training for developers, I haven't had a chance to do the complete path, but I did take... But I did take, but I did take the technical and decision makers. So there's about three courses that overlap, and that's a good way to start off right before you get into kind of like the Bedrock and the Amazon.
This one right here, the decision makers.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I took that one first, and that'll get you about half the way through that developer one.
Oh, okay, cool. Good to know. And does this is a pretty good primer for the LLM conversation then?
Right, definitely.
So what is a large language model, Greg?
Large language model is a huge model that's been trained on a massive corpus of data on the internet. And all that information is absorbed, and then on the episode 1 of the deep dive with LLMs, Tiffany in particular went really deep on how the information is ingested, and talked through embeddings, talked about parameters and how that information is represented within vector databases. So it was pretty incredible. It definitely had the gears turning in my brain when I was watching it.
Yeah, and it talks all about the differences between transformers. Like, no, not the transformers more than meets the eye, but it's the transformers from the neural network type transformers. And the importance here is there is this recurrent neural network, an RNN, that sequentially processes the data. So it's not doing anything in parallel or in process, and it's good, but it's slower, right? So these transformers, the transformer neural network.
Tongue twister.
The tongue twisters, the tongue twister Gen AI. But these transformer LLMs are capable, and it says it right here on the screen, of supervised training, although a more precise explanation is that they perform self-learning. So it's pretty powerful because they're doing it in parallel. So you have the ability for these transformer neural networks and the LLMs, which Werner Vogels did a great job explaining in the YouTube video here. But during training, these parameters are updated iteratively in order to minimize the error. So you can see that this is what this neural network looks like. And he starts to break it apart. And you have the opportunity for these language models or large language models to continually learn. And there's different types of models and different versions that are being trained.
That's right. And my understanding is, when they came out with the transformer neural network architecture, that really pushed the concept of LLMs forward, combined with the advances in hardware, particularly GPU, which is another reason why GPUs are in such hot demand, is because you need GPUs along with these transformer models to, to power and train these LLMs.
Exactly. And the GPUs, and it talks all about the GPUs here. Let me go ahead and just do a Control F on the screen and GPU, and we can see that these GPUs are used for training transformer-based LLMs, significantly reducing the training time because they're extremely intensive. They're training on billions of parameters. And actually, if we scroll down here on the page, we can see that OpenAI's GP3 model has 175 billion parameters, and its cousin can identify patterns. AI 21 Labs' the Jurassic 1 has 178 billion parameters, and they're just getting larger. They're not getting any. They don't call them small language models. They're large language models.
Yeah. What would that be? SLMs, small language models? Yeah. Who's that going to help?
But let's go ahead and jump over into our next conversation of not just how they work, but what are some of the applications or the use cases of them. So we can see here there's copywriting and knowledge-based answering, text classification, code generation, and text generation. But Greg, whenever I get stumped, because I get writer's block, we all get writer's block, whenever I get stumped, I tend to lean more toward a large language model to help me break through that writer's block. So this creative writing, copywriting, the ability to start something.
Absolutely.
How about you and your customers when you're working with because as an SA, you're working with customers?
Yeah, definitely. I think the mainstream view of an LLM that most are familiar with is kind of like the chat interface. But something my customers are taking a look at is looking at support, for example. So there's a concept of a knowledge base. So if you worked on a service desk in the past, you may have some sort of like static document that you're going through to find answers to help your customers. But now with the power of an LLM, now you can ask a question, which is essentially a prompt that gets sent to an LLM, and then you can get some feedback from there, which helps out big time. So that's something that I've seen as well as the AI coding companions, which one good example of that would be Amazon Q Developer, which is integrated into your IDE, which helps supercharge developers to be able to code faster, not only faster, but even more securely too.
Yeah, because I can identify those insecure opportunities and maybe help you generate more secure code and better code and stronger code and faster. Because instead of handwriting everything, you just give it a prompt. You say, create an Amazon S3 bucket or create this Lambda function with this code base, and it can do it for you. You do still have to review it, though, because it's just like the shared responsibility model that we teach in like any kind of architecting. It's more about reviewing what's spitting out and then fine-tuning that to fit your exact use case.
Right, and speaking of being able to review it, there are some guardrails in place, sometimes within the models, as well as Amazon Bedrock has a guardrails feature to make sure that the outputs are in line with what you would expect your customers to be able to view.
All right, let's go ahead and jump over to our demo here real quick and talk about what Amazon Bedrock is. So Amazon Bedrock, like you mentioned, has guardrails built into it. And Amazon Bedrock can allow you or give you access to these large language models that we've talked about. So you can see here that when you're in the Amazon Bedrock management console, you can see there's a getting started section. There's foundation models. We'll come to that in just a second. But from an overview standpoint, what are foundation models? What are large language models? And how do we dive deep into these? Well, the first step is just to get some hands-on experience. And that's what this segment's going to be. Come back later today, twitch.tv/AWS OnAir, and we'll talk more about prompt engineering and diving deep into that. But here you can see there's Jurassic 2, there's Titan, there's Claude, there's Command. So many options. Which one do you typically gravitate toward?
I'm liking Anthropic now, and particularly the Claude models. And I guess, while you're teeing that up, before Amazon Bedrock existed, what my customers were doing, they were just grabbing hold of high-powered GPU instances and then hosting the models on there, which definitely got the job done. But what I like about Amazon Bedrock is now it's almost like a API in front of several LLMs. You get to choose which one you want to do. It's essentially serverless. So unless you're sending a prompt or tokens to that LLM, you're not really getting charged. So
yeah, because it's all the pricing is all based on tokens and
Yep.
How many tokens you're actually using to make those calls. Because you have 178 billion parameters, but then the tokens are basically the text strings or something, right? That's broken up into chunks.
Yeah.
So when you're sending these tokens back out, the requests, then you can have the on-demand token request, but you can also purchase provision capacity. And we can see that. I saw it up here real quick. There it is. You can purchase provision throughput for your LLMs.
Right.
Yeah, and that way you can help reduce your cost.
Exactly.
So when you're diving into these, you mentioned the API access. So there is an API request, and we can see that I just got signed out. Let's sign back in real quick. Got to fix that timeout. But you can see here that
Only happens when you're live.
it only happens when you're live. Only the best demos get a timeout or some kind of error.
That's right.
If you don't get an error, it's not really a good demo. All right, so let's see here. We have this API request, and here's an example of what this API request looks like. It's a model ID, Anthropic Claude 3 Sonnet with the date and the version. And if we scroll down here, you can see the role of the user, the base image, and it's an image JPEG, and the data itself. This is the blob that we're sending as part of that request, right?
That's right.
And then the type is text, and it's asking what is in this image. So we're asking within this API request, what's in the image that we're sending, and it can actually spit that back out to us.
And I really like this concept of the playground because it's a very frictionless way for you to go in, enter some prompts without even necessarily having to put in some code, just to see how these LLMs operate, how your prompt adjusts what the LLM outputs back. So I really like it. And you have the chat, the text, and the image prompts as well.
Exactly. And if we jump over to our next section here of this area, we have foundation models. So we kind of talked about Bedrock and API access and some of the different large language models, but we have our base models here. And you mentioned Claude, and I tend to gravitate more toward Claude 3 Haiku at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that one, but find the model that works best for you, your use case, and also you can train your own models too. So there's that. You have a lot of custom options. So under custom models.
Episodes
and customs.
Yeah.
So under custom models, you can create a model, and then you can test a custom model, and then you can finally use and deploy that custom model. And you can customize that model. But before you do that, you have a fine-tuning job, and then you also have a continued pre-training job. But in order to use these, you do need to purchase provision throughput. So you cannot use on-demand token pricing, right?
Right.
I'm going to skip past this, though, because let's check out some of the examples.
Yes.
And we can dive into those examples. So which one of these do you want to dive into?
Let's see. My eyeballs are...
I know. Okay, I'll read it out for you. Action items from a meeting transcript. There's so many options here.
Oh, yeah.
Advanced Q&A with citation. We have advanced Q&A with citations, because I'm guessing that's going to have more than one person. And then we can see career coach and role play.
That career coach role play sounds interesting, as well as the action items from the meetings.
Okay.
That sounds, yeah.
Okay,
I like one of those.
Let's start with career coach and role play. It is Claude 3 Haiku, so like I mentioned, with large language models, there's something known as bias. And my bias is Haiku today. Okay.
That's
So
right.
let's go ahead and click on this, and then it's going to give us some examples of what we're going to do here. So an example prompt to set up in-character role-playing as a career coach. So Greg, are you willing to be my guinea pig today?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. Including the ability to reference a running conversation history. So if we go through, then we have this prompt example that talks about the history and the running conversation. And then an example response down here, and it says, this is what Claude Haiku has popped back out for us. And then also we can see the same thing as before with the image. We can see there's an API request with the exact details of this entire transcript. And remember, it's all JSON, so it's going to go from left to right. And we can see here's the entire details right here. So it's going to go for a long time. So if you were to programmatically insert this into your program, your application, then you can actually do the same thing using Bedrock's API models. But let's go back up and take a look at some of the configuration options, because when we're taking a look at these large language models, we can kind of customize them a little bit by having this. It's almost like when you're doing machine learning with Amazon SageMaker hyperparameter tuning.
Right.
You can tune the parameters. You can adjust them slightly, so we can have the temperature, the top P, the top K, the maximum length, and the stop sequences. So, but we're going to open this in the playground, because what are all these different things that we just mentioned from the configurations?
Only one way to find out, test them.
Test them, exactly. So here we have the same prompt that we saw, and I'll read this prompt out loud for our friends here, because I do understand it's a little bit long, but you will be acting as an AI career coach. So with this, and come back for the next segment, because we're going to talk more about prompt engineering and changing this to get more details. But notice that it's very specific.
Right, very.
Right. And then your goal is to give career advice to users. So Greg is our user today, and you'll be replaying to users who are on the AI Career Coach site and will be confused. You don't respond in the character of Joe. Okay? All right, so Joe is our model, and Joe is talking to user Greg. So Greg, hi, hope you're doing well. I just want to let you know that I'm excited to start chatting with you. And Joe, our model from Haiku, says, good to meet you. I am Joe, an AI career coach created by Ad Astra Careers. Nice. What can I help you with today? Let's go ahead and run this model and see what comes back. And again, we can change the hyperparameter tunings, and just how Dr. Werner Vogel's, while this is pumping out its response, during training, the parameters are updated iteratively in order to minimize the error. We can also make these changes in real time using Bedrock, and then adjust the temperature, the top P, which is undefined, and all of these are actually right here. So the length, the top P, the top K, the randomness, essentially, is what we're looking at here.
Yeah, I was reading into this earlier. What this is really doing, since these embeddings are really stored as kind of with numbers, these numbers change like what is influenced in terms of the words that are being kicked back out. Because keep in mind, large language models don't actually literally understand words. They just understand the math that's associated with the words and the relationships, like cat to kitten and car to truck, these types of things.
Yeah, and the way that Tiffany explained it in one of the episodes, actually the first episode,
Yeah.
is the proximity of words and the relationships to each other. So if you have a word house, it's going to look for the word house and how many occurrences of the next word after house and before house, or even home. And then it's going to start to map these different word relationships together and creating this neural network of what's the next probability of that word, right?
Yeah, and it learns all of these relationships by ingesting typically public data sets in how we as humans speak, and then it just stores this mathematically into these vector databases. And Tiffany does a nice job on
She does.
at episode 1. Definitely check that out.
A really good job. Our producers over here are yelling us. We have 1 minute left, so we'll come back to this demo real quick and see what the response was from Joe. So once I see it up here on the screen, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pretty soon. There it is.
There you go.
A little off on timing. But here we can see Joe has said, clears throat. This is why I love Haiku, because it has a personality. It's like, speaks in a warm and friendly tone. Well, hello there. This is Joe, your friendly AI career coach from AI Career Coach Co. I'm so glad you reached out to me. So we can adjust the response from this with more personality, more temperature as we need to. But we do have to wrap it up. I see our producers going like this. So we're going to go ahead and say thank you so much for joining us. We are going to be back later today to talk more about deep dive into LLMs with AWS. Don't forget to complete the survey. Thanks to Greg for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to our chat moderators and all of you. Stay tuned for more from the AWS Summit Los Angeles, live right behind us.